Okay. Whenever you want to start.
Yeah, just lower the volume to the video. And
Oh yeah, that's right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, enjoying this poetry night by Mr. Stephen Hawks. I'm Deyanira Ramirez, director of the museum, and it's really a pleasure to have you here enjoying the art, music, poetry, and classes, everything happening at the same time at the Brownsville Museum of Fine Art. So we have a lot of events and programs for all the community, and this is one of the events that we like to host every time that we have that possibility with the artists that exhibit at the museum. So thank you everyone for supporting the arts at the museum, and I would like to introduce the Professor Stephen Hawks. Please give us the frame.
Yeah, thank you all for letting me have this exhibit, and then this is last minute, Connor. So we've only been advertising for about a week, so it's not a huge crowd, but I thought there might just be like one or two people, so I'm glad at least somebody's here. In some ways, you start feeling like when you have an exhibit, and then you also are reading your own work. I tried to get a friend of mine to read his poetry too, so it would be more, diverse. But it was too last minute, so I wanted to read. I was gonna do kind of performance with this, but I never came up with a performance. So I wanted somehow the writing or reading to go along with it. And you can see that some of them have poems, but for the focus of this is not, in this one, is not so much for this exhibit. I've had other exhibits where it was a key focus, but where it is, and I haven't had a large exhibit in almost a decade, and I'm rambling, so I gotta get to the point. So I wanted the stuff to work visually, directly, but also to have other things, other layers of interest as well. So, I mean, like and I would have had more things like this if I had had time, and like if I wasn't living in once again in a land where I'm not from there, because I've always been that way. I've always been a kind of an outsider. I sound like a southern white male because I am a southern white male, but I was from somewhere else when I went to live in the South as a child, but I grew up in the South, so in some ways I was an observer. And that's what you hear in the poetry. It's kind of like this person observing, hopefully. But I have the insomnia drawings, that's the key feature of that side. And I have one poem to go with that. Insomnia during COVID. I could not sleep. Oh, I could sleep. Yeah, sorry, I did it wrong. I could sleep, and then I couldn't. So it's a lifelong problem. And that's the problem too, is I'm going to explain everything, and I can't do that. I have to just read it, right? So I could sleep, and then I couldn't. Slipping for a moment past thoughts, raging, seeking the momentary ray of conscious attention into the well, into dark rest. Then rising again from half dream to waking dream to the surge of continual focus. One thing after another, not stream of consciousness, not the old gnarled fish breaking the surface, but daily concerns momentarily separated from God's resolve. Even the darkest, hardened culprit knows God. The festering thorn wound that won't heal. And if it does, nothing but calluses and scars raging away that echoed in these raves, faithlessness, an inability in moments to know one's maker nor oneself. All right. Late summer, this just is like, I'm starting with a couple of more recent poems, and then I'm going to read some that are from my unpublished books. So, late summer 2022. That thing that held us gripped, the culling seems over for most, though a monkey screaming in the yard still wearing its mask, and the various variants keep lurking, boogeymen dancing in a box, a too bright light like Christmas in August. Open your present, Missy May. Fire and flood and famine loom large in war. Several theaters open for perusal. Some old, same old. Though quite a few more demigods far and wide pander their nickel for a cup, barking to the crowd, "You can get what you want if you want what I've got. Drink this." It doesn't even remain to be seen because it's mostly lies. For the love, well, you get the picture. Even posted it, or one of its variants again. My voice sounds cynical and snide, but I want you to know it could get worse. And if it does, well, we'll need each other, need ourselves, our wits, the mantra for calm, though heeding the alarm, and our ability to pray, the active force which drives away ghostly and apparent choirs of doom. Now this one is one from one of my old works called The Mound Builders, and it takes a little bit of explanation, but not a lot. Hopefully I won't go on and on. But it's called The Mound Builders because there's a culture very similar to the Aztec and Mayan that ranged, it wasn't one culture, because that's a misnomer, and the term mound builders is a misnomer as well. There were pyramidal cultures like Mesoamerica, but they built with dirt, so when in later years they had been abandoned, and this was prior to the Spanish, they began to be abandoned, they began to dissolve and disappear. These mounds, and these temple mounds that had building structures in wood disappeared. They weren't in stone, and I was like, when I started becoming aware of this, and it was right there, 60 miles from us was actually 20 miles from us was one of the mound sites, and 60 miles was a major mound site, what archaeologists call, which is another misnomer, the southern cult or cultus. And they were a lot like the Aztec. They had human sacrifice. That's the thing that first comes to my mind, but it's not the main thing. They had a lot of pottery that I love, and so that was my connection as well. So I started researching this, and I wrote this poetic thing. I planned on writing these novels and all this kind of stuff, and then I was so frustrated, and then suddenly it came to me, and I wrote this long series of poems around this theme of the mound builders, loosely tied to this ancient culture. All legends of return. This is called Hidden Blood, and it goes with this painting, and that's why I'm reading it. It's one of the illustrations that I made, which is really not always appreciated in the poetry culture to illustrate poetry, but I still like illustration. All legends of return bear this same mystery. If I no longer exist in flesh, the corporal structure already dispersed to the far corners, how then am I remade to return, new knowledge given or born within this world? Generation to generation broken, generation to generation, suddenly they were gone, driven west by southern route, man, woman, child, mother, father, daughter, sons, brothers, and sisters. Without regard to sovereignty or place, one respectable shopkeeper, driven to defend his woodland brethren, turned renegade, fought his own war, but in the end, the Chattahoochee Valley was emptied of the creek, emptied of discernible native blood. Generation to generation lapsed. We live out the devastations of our forebears, suffer the senseless edict to be torn from the land, driven out into the alien desert, the mineral plain of mechanical ruin. I keep doing this thing with my eyes, sorry. We live out the devastation of our forebears, suffer the senseless edict to be torn from the land, driven out into the alien desert, the mineral plain of mechanical ruin, looking upon the humiliation of our elders, seeking in pride our own right way. We may hope in return no vengeance is sought. Make friends in the land that your burden be lessened. The mystery emerges. The fair black man's lost line goes back to more than slave. Or African tribe, doubly scorned, he could not go with family west to suffer his fate with his adopted tribal train. My friend at work takes white oak splits to weave strong baskets like the old sharecroppers did and slaves before a native Creek long years ago. I see within his face he comes to this by right, both black and native there, in flesh and blood. Now everywhere I see, not only did white masters have their way with their illicit property, but love was kindled tribe to tribe, a true adoption in this native land. It wells within my human heart, breaks like waves upon consciousness, born as others long have borne blood's burden, seeking yet to love. A creek face, darker than when Spaniards first claimed the New World, peers from behind the quick mark checkout counter. African dark blended with native physiognomy. Now everywhere I notice the degree of variance within each race, hidden mystery, the blending blood, melded in resemblance one to another. The conflict of race and tribe within me also, lost, hidden history of Europe, come to a new land, having no past, emptied of memory. Right, that's called Hidden Blood. And this one is not the last of my southernisms, so to speak, but probably not the most disturbing. But the sharecropper's mule is the next one, and it's if you ever heard of James Agee, he was commissioned by the government in the 30s to write about the southern sharecroppers, and literally was very near where I lived for over 20 years, 30 years. I still have a house there, not worth much, but it's a house. And it's called the Sharecropper's Mule. And I worked with mules and donkeys a little bit, so there's some of that, and heard stories too about mules, which that's put into this a little bit. Something I actually heard. You'll figure it out maybe. It's also metaphor, so maybe you can figure out the metaphor as well. Sharecropper's mule. The one that shares his fate, the one he almost loves if he were able. He beats her in the field, knowing he cannot bear another year, another split yield, seeing his family waste. The one he beats enough to make her flee the scant feed and the dreaded chore that she is frozen in face of. After the worthy blow recovers her stride, bides her time, another season locked in harness, evenings eating the dust of the old one, awaiting the glue factory or the far field to rot in the sun on a hot day in June. Not too far off for him, his pallid eyes a mirror of one's own assumed life. Biding his time, knowing when he will not, disturbed by a fly or low on sleep. The baby's sick, you heard her in the night. What is salvation? Even you know he can't wait, but takes your time allotted with his to bring this field to yield. As you yield, prone in the harness, fixed on nothing but this repeated task, year in, year out, at the day's end, knowing which moment he will be content enough in his stride to forget your stubbornness and his own, almost to sense in this useful bond the lacking love. You know the moment, have calculated in the cabal of animal consciousness the seemingly random point in time that you and he were born for, precisely when. You stop abruptly, he flies forward, shatters his knees on the plow. Anyone as near as the far fence by the road might stop and think, there's a righteous man, betting the furrow just laid behind his gaunt mule in prayer, thanking God or blessing the seed, asking for a good yield, while there he knows it is God who has bent him, now God's righteousness, and he doesn't cry out, but sees he too may lie in the field and rot. This year the field may go, and both mules die, one for want of feed, the other worn out. He's there, silent past pain, knowing soon his wife will come. Seeing he has not, undo the mule, put her up, only after she stands alone while the two humankind make their way, ambling towards helplessness, him leaning upon her frail breast back to the ramshackledness of their unceasing demise. And in that brief span, she breathes deep the evening air, expanding taut the leather straps 50 to 100 times or more, knowing, however a mule may know, the purpose of his suffering. Okay, that one I have had published. This is our Juno, and it's never really seen the light of day, but it's one that I sort of like in a weird way. And these are kind of harsh poems in a way, and I'll get past that into a few that are maybe not so harsh, especially at the end. And I'll have to check my time to see how long I'm going. So I'm gonna have to skip some. Arjuna walks into the woods. Okay, this one is also has Southern culture implied, but I'm using the word Arjuna. If anybody knows the story of Arjuna, he's the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Indian, it's sort of like an Indian Bible text. It's a part of the Mahabharata, I think. I don't know how you pronounce it. Anyway, so it's a spiritual text. But Arjuna here is a young boy, but it's first time hunting, right? And I didn't hunt. My father grew up hunting, but he hunted raccoons, that kind of thing, to eat, right? And then I grew up around people that hunted, but I never hunted. So I never had that in my life because my father didn't want it for me. And but you know, I know from living around Southern men what they're like. And later, actually, instead of just being kind of like self-righteous and trying to judge everyone, I started knowing these people because I worked in what was like a really weird place. It was a Southern antebellum museum for 20 years. So I got to know the people that actually plowed the mules, they did all this stuff, and I worked with some mules for a while too, donkeys. And so I also ate venison and stuff like that, the people that hunted. So I have a little understanding of the culture. Not entirely firsthand though. So Arjuna walks into the woods. Now I've become death, the destroyer of worlds. That's from the Bhagavad Gita. And then man born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. That's Job 14:1. Arjuna walks into the woods past the rusted Circle Coke sign. Love is the thorn through the mottled cloth, black crease and steady hand the weight there. Better a twig break now and the buck run on. Better if mama calls him back home. Better the rain wash away our control. Death becomes honor and horror alike. The vaulted sky is blue. The tomb is blue. The endless blue stone at the door of the woods. Sometimes they tell me I don't have any clear recollection, any clear notion of what's good, no thorough understanding of the world. Well, the world is dead. That is true. And I'm walking under this stone. This boy has a long curved stick in his hand, and he is just past trembling or just before. He doesn't know the quickness of it. After we stalk so long and try to feel the air, feel it out, listen, step lightly, move on, he knows. I can tell. I changed my mind with his awareness. But it's different. Damn the little I know that I envy him. Better guide's what he needs, at least to God, his own God. The buck is that. He's the buck. Hell, I'm just an old Indian thinking riddles. My mama, his mama, they both tell me the same thing, and that's nothing. They realize it when I shouted at them, and they see the coals under the dark red eyes. They don't fail to recognize it when the subtlety turns them, then the fire blinds them. Hell, boy, you have to act. You can't just see the fire and not act. Slow and steady, that's what they always say. the ones that tell me the hell I'm in. Those 15 holes in that Coke sign, and that was that. About 20 years ago, and I was stuck with it all at once, 15 in a row, letting it out. Then another 20 in the street lights. Lord, they wanted to put me away, thought I'd kill somebody, only I didn't. Though sometimes I remember differently. Don't say I said that. Secrets, that's what we're out here for. Everybody knows, it's only you can do it. I keep thinking about your mama, and I can't do it. It's just dreams. You too, dreams, something I made up, something I made just sitting here thinking about this sign, driving down the road, driving steady, not slow, driving and sitting here thinking the way that buck looks at me on the wall forever. Anyway, that's that one. And this is the last of the dreary, I hope. Not entirely, but that's pretty dreary stuff, right? I got a sense of humor. My students know I got a sense of humor. And there is humor in that one to some extent, but it doesn't sound like it when I read it because I'm a little nervous. Anyway, kind of innuendos. Oh, by the way, the sharecropper is also what does he call it? An analogy, a metaphor for marital relationships. So that's also a little bit of humor there too, right? And hopefully this doesn't sound so misogynist. I started listening to myself and I'm like, oh my God. So, because it's not my voice entirely, it's my perceptions of things that I've sort of lived through. Okay, so the Hanged Man, and this is literally an experience that I had. So, and the Hanged Man, this is one of the most disturbing in a way. Disappearing within myself, driving past newly planted fields, calculating the time. And just to preface this shortly, I used to drive this road, this long road from across South Georgia that's very empty in some places, and mostly just fields, and mostly cotton, because cotton became at the highest production level during the 90s. People don't realize that, but the highest production level ever in the South. And then they had to back off from it because it was too much cotton. And also globalism took over. But anyway, so there's like that as a pretext, and the idea of going from my parents' house to the house that I lived across the state 3 hours. And I drove that drive a lot. A lot of times I drove it alone. The Hanged Man. Disappearing within myself, driving past newly planted fields, calculating the time, cotton sprouting mile after mile, leaving my father's house. I have a cup of water here. This has been happening to me because of some of the medications I'm taking. They're antihistamines, and they mess up my voice. Sorry about that. Leaving my father's house alone mid-afternoon spring, blacktop splits, spreading horizon, wraps around, passes mesmerizing relief from exhaustion, lifetimes of tedious trials, landscapes blending memory and dream, taken, amoralized, increased planning, mandated government, allotment, streamlined production towards efficiency and profit, at least half sky, asphalt purring beneath tires, comfort lulling into ease, distending thoughts. Suddenly I saw him, dark form suspended against brightness, catapulting towards terror and disbelief, a lone figure standing out of time, behind him hanging beneath, swaying from the limb of a giant oak, details suspended, jerking my head while focus tightened, until finally I saw a boy jump down from a rusted metal folding chair, running along the fence and disappear in a game. Not being forced to make his end, choosing himself to vanish, to hide, or being called to flee for his own reason, but not from fear. The apparition is quickly chided from sight. What I had seen, or thought I had seen, or felt, as I drove on, confounded to recall some memory, a phantom image or photograph, a stifling horror, lost or waiting, historical documents, newspaper clippings, a story told, distant past, how distant and how long ago, to prod each empathy, such empathy and sorrow, provoke uneasiness in my blood, an evocation, this unnamed man hanging there, calculated to subdue them, make them docile, subservient. Some still remember, will not forget. Somewhere in the town I'm driving to, where I live now, it still exists, the hanging tree. Recollect as though revealing buried secrets still dangerous to speak. The unsuspecting children playing there might here be forced to acknowledge the point of an unhealed wound. Deep pain that will not abate, cannot be soothed away, nor dulled with drink or dope, or bring back the feverish illness, plays jagged cadences against the heart, out of the darkest stupor, hearing them call again, a father, a lover, a son, or their accuser rasping to make one start, cry out, or flee, and speak no more. Or we could speak, you and I, without involvement, about the past, level events to a comfortable sameness after so much bombardment, like this journey home, or the whole last century, or now. Or we might speak, as I did, with the son of an elder master of the local lodge, ask him to retell a story from his father, recall the apparitional vision of darker truths, seen through the eyes of a boy visiting my hometown before the First World War. 2 young black men outside the courthouse hanging from a lamppost. Explain the reasoning for such public spectacles, and he used the vernacular, like a true historian. Again, some detachment is useful to contemplate the crimes of these 2 men and listen to the logic expounded for my edification. Even now, how they served as examples to their kin and kind to keep them in their place, to keep them tame, to let them know how dear the price for going beyond the limits given. For freedom is a dream one never met in such a life. Between extremes, docility or pain and death. This useful state dissolves to rage and shame. For I must also grasp some higher law than blood for blood for blood. His wife was listening and asked that I might hear, "Why do you hate them so?" His serious reply, "I just can't help it. I don't know. It's in my blood." And in his blood, he craves their patronage, their simple lives, made to exist as animals close to the earth without duplicity, except that they are men. What he won't say, he loves them. It is a lover's hate, a God's rage at being duped, left with one's emptiness alone, perpetual horrors, purposeless except in this, that they submit or not accepting banishment and death. Driving past newly planted cotton, mid-afternoon in spring, I have it now. Without detachment or duplicity, except expect no more, but hope. Below this tree I saw him hanging. Saw him and knew a man is sacrificed. Just as surely as a child on the chair, just as surely as the child on the chair jumped down. All right, well that's my southernisms in some way. I thought better of some of it, but So I'm going to get to a few more that have to do with I've combined these with works. This work was shown in the museum a while back. It's called Et in America Ego. A little bit difficult to explain, but it has a more art historical context. And that's Poussin's. I need to look at the time to make sure I'm not going over. All right, it's only 45 minutes is what I was going to go, so I might get through them. So Et in America Ego, and this is Poussin. It references Poussin Dart's painting, which is a classical theme, Et in Arcadia Ego, and that is classicism that harkens back to the Greek culture. So it's this idea of Western culture, and but Arcadia to the Greeks is sort of like Eden in Christian culture, Judeo-Christian culture. So Arcadia is this place of idyllic shepherds that live close to the land and are peaceful, and everything's wonderful, beautiful, natural. And so Et in America Ego, that's the context of that phrase. And I'll see if I can do this one. Not too. Okay, and this one I'm going to read it kind of fast because it's something that sort of has to do with the rhythm. I kind of got some of the way there right from jazz, from those that were influenced by jazz like T.S. Eliot, but a bunch of other things. My cultural background is so eclectic I can't even explain it half the time. And that can be a problem, but that's why the show is so like I had to separate out stuff because they conflict with each other in terms of like their content and the way they're done. Et in America Ego. I too am in Arcadia. I too am in Houston, in Lumpkin, Atlanta, in Brownsville. I too am here. Autumn unfolding out of summer heat, wind over door jambs, waiting the swing, opening upon winters further deep. Though here in subtropical vetting, I too am here, on every television screen, on billboards and road signs and traffic lights, humming my old song, humming my prophecy, curving around interstate bypasses, roaring over bayou and plain, through mountains and valleys, across rivers and streams. Vultures hop and flap across roadkill as I pass, the rotting corpse tender, bruised and bludgeoned and bloodied from bumper and tire into the city of concrete and glass. Drop money in the meter and rise or descend into the steel-framed crypts. I too am here, taking the elevator, taking the train, the bus and the bike, mag wheels and hybrid height, pure-blooded, self-evident and arcane, writing messages on cereal boxes, on garment labels, instructions for removing stains. I am here calling, distending consciousness, distorting limitless distances, wireless, floating in space, orbiting the spheres, signaling back. I am here. I am here in the factory, the farm, the Astrodome, the park, the mechanics, the doctor's waiting room, leaping through Cosmo and field and stream. I walk the state hospitals for the criminally insane, the prisons, the churches, the bars, detention centers for the illegal aliens, and beauty parlors and malls, donning t-shirts and rhinestones and piercings and hoodies and tailored three-piece suits. You've seen me on the street, clutching a candy and needing a nose wipe, hair thinning, head bobbing, nodding off on the bus. Seen me trimming the hedges, hands dirty, sweat pouring. See me now, holding a cup at the section of Boca Chica and Frontage Road, begging you, commanding you to listen. I'm here, standing in this space. But you pass from here, to never pass again, this way. You've seen the headlights rising over the crest, seen the city silhouettes standing in stark contrast to the lightning flash, warning of fire and flood and dark. I'm not asking you for anything, for all will give their life, but you have seen something bound to time, unbound, loosed beyond my grip, though you were startled once, which set you on this path. You saw me everywhere, could not escape. Nothing is only as it seems. It is also the other. I am here and I am not. All right, and I forgot to say that in Arcadia, ego, I am in Arcadia, the I am speaking is death, but you could take it in a lot of different ways, and I'm almost glad I didn't say that, because it doesn't have to be just death, and I think that's where I'm going with that. Well, let's see if I can find the next one. Okay, so this is for that piece right there, The Rivers of Babylon. It's sort of the most sing-songy piece I've got. At one time I wanted to be a singer, but you know, that was one of my other lives, right? Yeah, so, By the Rivers of Babylon. And this was actually triggered by hearing this reggae version of By the Rivers of Babylon. And I thought, that's really an interesting take on that passage, because it's a mournful song, right? But it's a very uplifting, it's a mournful biblical passage, but it's an uplifting song that they've changed a little bit. So, By the Rivers of Babylon. He who has seen everything will make known to the lands. I will teach about him who experienced all things alike. And that's from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So it's called The Rivers of Babylon, or one time I called it the Son of Babylon. At the center of pain there is no time, no rescue till the moment's gone. And when each moment disappears, who's left to sing our song? I've seen most desolate days, and seen the brightest shattering suns, awakened in the goddess bower and sucked the teat of death's bleak crone. Who is left to count the cost, and who embraces God's rich main? I'm the giver and the graft. I am the son of Babylon. There by the rivers we were born, barley in the fields swayed, bird song and cheer the whole day long. Civilizations rose and fell. Sing to me now while we have life. Sing to me now while the day is long. Sing to me now, lover and wife, and I'll sing to you till we are done. So that's a little more cheery. So my point was this being in the presence of decay. So decayed civilizations, we're always in the presence of both decay and growth. And you know, acceptance. If you can't find anything beyond accepting what's in front of you, it's infinite. Everything that's in the now is infinite. Just like the past is infinite, just like the future is infinite. The now is infinite. And this is called Flyby, and this is a little bit of a true story here. And I'm coming close to, okay. So, Flyby. It was not a dream. It may have seemed like one. It was not. It sounded like the end of earth. It woke me up. I got out of bed fast, went to the window, forgot my dream. Coming from the east, the Gulf side, sounding like nothing ever heard, like it might scrape the roof, bend the trees, or break. I expected the house to fall, a hot wind of radioactive annihilating burn. I couldn't make the angle to see it coming. Heard it overhead, felt the vibration and the weight like a freight train falling from the sky or a missile the size of God. I had to know before my imminent death the form it took. Moved quickly to the kitchen side door and ran out, saw nothing. Heard the screeching fuselage fade, left at last to wonder, what? The mystery thundering projectile in my life. Immediately, the internet rumor mill proclaimed Musk had flown in friends. The direction was wrong, or I might have let it go at that. Nuclear swords rattling on the border of Ukraine crossed my mind, testing out military preparedness along the Mexican border. should all hell break loose. Later in the metaverse, they said it was a military flyby of another sort, a funeral in Brownsville's historical graveyard, loud enough to wake the dead. More than that, it shook the trees, scared the birds so much they stopped their song. If I could only stop and yet go on, figure out a way to end this wretched noise that only stops when I have slept enough, when angels come and sing to me to my rest, when interesting and magical dreams replace hollow jest and tedium, and my own wretchedness, burned coffee smells from more a life ago replace the silence in the room, since true believers shot across the sky, wrestling to return in one great flash to that one true beginning of the world, or slowly walk this dreamscape land in its multitudinous forms, one from one and many in return. This too is death, once seen as so, a gorgon's head atop a pike, milk gone sour in the fridge, and that black silk, so full of stars. For so many things, I still am glad, happy that the world still stands, hopeful always we forestall disasters imminent or otherwise. My wife is here to keep me my company and some few friends and family. I know it will take more than bringing my own grocery bags or putting plastic in recycling bins, growing one tomato in our backyard, digressing with my students, teaching art, any subject where we break assumptions from the start. I know it will take more. It does. All right. This one is the piece, not the far corner, but one right before that. I remember you then. I remember you then. They're just excerpts of this poem in that one. I remember you then, poised between being and knowing, between spirit and physical form, light bleeding through darkness, flitting then unseen, slipping back to the void behind closed eyes. I remember you then. I remember myself, already the tragic flower of history's odds, child of the day and doomed, everything previously known with blinders on, hands clapping in the misfire. We, if we were, had to replay idyllic songs from childhood past, irretrievable now, irretrievable then, though the fires of forgetfulness still burn the edges of consciousness. And that which can only be mentioned becomes something long lost, a seed in the womb, progeny of another kind, more resolute, more fully formed. If I get my clock one more time, see which ones to edit out. Maybe. Across the Bridge. This was one of the first poems that I wrote specifically about being in Brownsville, but it's not so much just about being in Brownsville, but I use that as I'm trying not to use Brownsville, period, but we all take and we all give, right? So, across the bridge. Most folks like me have trouble living up to what most folks expect. I see a crab wash up, another dart away into its hole. Sure, the beast was stalking prey. These are no ordinary things. There are no ordinary things. And when there seem to be, I think is stranger than before. The dullness weighs on me. My muscles ache, my bones feel close to breaking. I push it off and run away. This hole takes on the earth's surplus of sand, where then, yeah, she doesn't know I'm not done yet, right? Well, I have to keep my phone on because I've had times where she needed me and I wasn't there, so anyway. She'll know I'm not through. All right. This hole takes on the earth's surplus of sand, where then the earth's surplus of sand, Where then to rest my vagrant, homeless mind? Several times I've asked a stranger, what do you think? I don't want definitions, no definitive answers that might exert some claim, some party affiliation. They think I'm talking about religion, politics, or sex. I might remember what it is, but can't, because it always claims the impossible within me and without. Deals me a sudden blow. I won't be like that. Not like the crab, not the same, but wait and think. You think I'm talking about myself? What self exists? The voice speaking, the one spoken to, the pen, the hand, the paper, making marks, the other room, the floor I sit on, the cars outside, the wind, the fountain in the lake. There's always a new name for what we all already know. And then there's the other added to it. Fictions and truths, the unseen nearby ocean and the Rio Grande outside. It's little Resaca's. Just a word evokes place. But if you think the universal thought in English is one thing, crab. In Titswa, something else, Nzolo, so my mother says. Jeba in Montemoros. Heba, I don't know how to say it. Somebody say it. Haiba, okay, Haiba, in Montemoros. Across the bridge. Lovers love late and in the morning stay or cross into mysterious lands where luckless opportunity and death await. How many times has it been man takes a bridge? Gotta start that stanza over, sorry. So just explain. Nzolo, my mother was from Mozambique, born there, so I asked her to give me the name of crab in Titswa, right? So she still knew it. So lovers love late and in the morning stay or cross into mysterious lands where luckless opportunity and death await. How many times has it been? Man takes the bride takes him, and they begin to die. Or like the desert bloom, create some color in a world of dust, like lovers late again turn back at the gates, by guards and guns and metal barriers. Our progress awaits, which side reveals our true identity. I'm going to probably murder this too. Tomando ledos. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not. No, not taking sides. Reminiscence, evocation. Before, what, and after, then. It's not recalling that wakes us, but living into the boundaries, into the seeming divide, into the arch bouquet, awaiting arrival. In fact, burying the sand in our craw, hearing the music of scavenger birds, awkward music always reminding me of infinity and the inevitable structured in time. All right, so let's just go to the last two. I'll get rid of one or two of these. Okay. Okay. The accoutrements of falling down. This is wrapping it up. 3 short ones, or relatively short. The accoutrements of falling down. I broke the one that this next one comes with, but anyway, I'll talk until that. Considering the task at hand, the exhibition I'm working on, and my job, so this was written really recently during the Christmas break. I had a dream, and this is that dream. The accoutrements of falling down. Considering the task at hand, the exhibition I'm working on, and my job, the new semester starting, you would think I'd had enough to do. But I am sitting here, a dream in my head, a poem to write, poetry about poetry. What a bore. I've often had things come to me in dreams or in a moment's flash as though I were somewhere else in thought, yet can't quite comprehend or clearly know this other place, until I do. A single phrase, a word, a thought, a kernel coalescing with the whole, my meaning in my life. Our girls are young again. My mother too. Though I'm neither young nor old, but in between those formative years. And now the age I am, ranging the wide world, never sitting still, even when she says, come sit in my lap. But when I do, I don't stay for long. I jump back up and say, Mom, I'm too big for that. The dream went on. I was walking the neighborhood, a neighborhood familiar, unfamiliar, both, from previous dreams, from life. I'm fiddling with some CDs caked in clay, thinking about my journals, about my poems, fumbling with the curb, the sidewalk, the grass. If I could ever put a name to it, the posthumous collection of my poems. If ever such a thing should come to pass, it came to me in a dream. A flash, without explaining anything. I understand the accoutrements of falling down. Anyway, that's the poem, that one. And then these two are so I'll read this one last. I'm sorry, is this too long?
No.
Can I read two more or not? Okay. Epiphany. If there had not been the one that stood for and was compassion above all else. First, love. For God and neighbor, where would we be now? Though many proclaim this truth, be honest with yourself, the world would be worse. Whatever you may think of God, whatever you think of religion or the church, the sword Christ wielded most was love. Love wields the strongest blow. So many rail against. The logos of all consciousness and being or becoming love. Muhammad championed the widow, Buddha taught the Eightfold Path, and Paul and Peter helped to build the church. These are the teachings and the fruits of love. But love itself, that may manifest in every heart. The logos or creative word, that was from the beginning and is one with that, which has no beginning or end and can't be qualified, including the quality of number, but can only be experienced. Just think, a human being unworthy and knowing this prepared the way. Oddly enough, the easiest way, this love, this being, this logos, this word, greater than any teaching or ourselves. All right, and then this was more about another type of love. And it's the piece that this went to, I was carrying too much and dropped it and it shattered on the floor. So, just par for the core, right? Whatever that means. I don't even know what that means. I really don't know what that means. I just know it's the same. Anyway, through patient art, and this is the last one. Mere mortals love without reciprocation. They love when every thought says, fool, resist. They love through burning rage and every horrible passion. They scare the lover and they scar themselves. But what is love? It does not endure each trial. If cynic sorrow scoffs at its demise and bites the hand that pushed the stone of horror, an empty, soulless world that has no love. Though freely given, love is ruled by caution, with every hidden gift to ripen soul. And to the one that they themselves are wanting, give hidden love that in an age frees all. The pain of dying to each possible sorrow unfolds the paradox of love in life. And every life has all the love it offers, though hidden in a stone unmoved by strife. A wondrous act may lead to its unfolding, reveal the hidden gem through patient art. And that's it. I really appreciate the opportunity to read. I hadn't done it in about a decade.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Stephen, thank you everybody for taking the time and middle of the week and enjoying the museum, the poetry, and supporting the arts. I'm gonna give a special thanks to our board members that are here always as the only ones supporting the arts, Ms. Amber Hygienist, and Dr. Ruth Cox. Thank you. And again, I invite you to follow our social media, our website, see what we're doing, what we have to offer, educational programs, different type of exhibits, talks, poetry, music, performances. We'll have a very full calendar of events for this year. So if you become a member supporting that, or at least spread the word of what we're doing, it's gonna be really appreciated. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to say yes when you want to ask.
The person that's supposed to join us, Councilman.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll take
we
this
Anna
one.
Sanchez. Is this you, Dr. Kite? What do you think?
I'd like to go just a little bit too. But I'll reach out to you anyway. And if not, she might be busy. Because I got another opportunity today, so I'm like, she's not responding.
That's fine.
It's just that, like I was looking at Clarissa last night at some of the artwork in the room.
There's a few of them. I try, but you know, it's just like getting into exhibits. It's not that easy. There's a lot of competition.
But it's just held.
Yeah, and I'm not really like, I'm not like your typical contemporary poet. I kind of jump all over the place. I don't have one way that I write. It's like I don't have one way that I do
Piano,
art.
but it's starting to pop out.
Just like a store.
Well, that, I mean, I own it. I own it. I don't worry about it.
Then I think,
You know,
well, somebody with that one piece and said, grabbed it.
so it's like, I mean, why? I'm not doing it to get published. I'm doing it because I want to write, you know, or I do the art because I want to make art. Yeah, there's connections you make that are more personal than having like this huge public or whatever, you know. So, like, and I'm, you know, I had my day in the sun too. I was an actor for a while. I acted sometimes, a couple of times, and this was just in a small town with about 1,000 people, you know. So it's like I know what it's like, but and I got a taste of it. But it's not like
You can ask for it.
I quit
For the loan.
You know.
Or say like,
So.
we asked for so much donation.
Oh yeah, we were there. Yeah, the artist talk. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I tell my students they're interesting because everybody's interesting. Yeah, we're trying to unlock that in our students. Yeah, so they can express it. Are you from here?
I lived down in we've been here about 4 years.
Going on 11? Yeah, we're going on 11.
Okay, take care.
No, I don't have to leave. I just wanted to say hello to some of the people. That's fine. No, go ahead. Living History Museum? Yeah, I learned a lot working there. And mainly I just sat down and listened to this old black guy that was right next to me in another house. When I got a minute, I would go listen to his like really heart-wrenching stories. Sometimes really funny stories though, like really weird stuff, which probably, I need to turn that off. Yeah, because it's gonna run my battery down. Probably already did run down. Oh, it didn't.
It just did. No.
Off, there we go.